Well, I needed a new pair of seats for the Concord boat. Unfortunately, the operator's side or the driver's side seat had completely broken. The upholstery was already bad on it. The wooden frame was junk, so I decided to just replace it with a pair of cheap seats. I didn't want to put a ton of money into seats, but I did want something fairly tall or similar in size to what was in there. So I looked around and then I saw these that were recommended on Amazon, and they're calling them fishing boat seats. They fold down, so they're definitely, I knew they were going to be smaller, but they claim to be a high back seat. And when I looked at the specs, I noticed that they gave dimensions right here. And they say that the seat is 16 3/4 inches wide, 20 1/2 inches deep, and 23 3/4 inches tall. And when I compared that to my seats in the boat, they weren't quite as large, but they seemed pretty close. They were definitely larger than another pair that I had seen advertised that were cheaper. I don't remember which ones, if it was any of these, but anyways, so that's why I decided to go with these. I ordered them on June 20th. Oddly enough, they are now saying that these are currently unavailable, so apparently I got some of the last ones. And this is for a pair. The other thing that's nice is that, I ordered these on the 20th, and today's the 24th, and they're already in. So that's pretty fast service. So this pair of seats only cost me $169.99 with free Prime shipping. So I guess I shouldn't expect too much, but I just, I hope these are going to be large enough. You know what? They might be okay. I know they're going to be smaller than the seats that I have in the boat now, the ones that are all broken, which are useless. But I looked into it, and any of the seats larger than this, you start getting into more like the captain's seats or whatever they call them, where they don't fold down because they're not for any bass boat. They're for more like my boat. Problem is, those seats start at around $280, $300 a piece. I don't want to put $600 in seats into that boat, especially since the rear bench seat that's in that boat, it fits in there perfectly, so I can't find a bench seat that size that'll fit, which means I might have to get that seat reupholstered or get a seat cover made for it if I want to even try and match this. These were available in a couple different color schemes. I chose the blue, white, and silver, or blue, white, and gray, because I noticed when I was in the boat that I actually have some gray on the side, on the inside wall of the boat, and the blue and the white. So let's run these down by the water where the boat is and take a look and see how small they look compared to one of the original seats. So the seats are just mounted on plywood boxes that are then screwed to cleats that are, I think they're fiberglassed into the floor. But the plywood bottom of the original seat was so rotted that it ripped right out of the rusted screws, so I was able to just pull that broken seat right off. So now I've got the new seat on the operator's side, and it actually, from here, doesn't look that bad. It is about the same height, so they didn't lie about the dimensions. It's just less beefy looking, kind of wimpy looking, so that's the issue as far as looks go. So now looking down from the top, you can really see the difference. But then again, look how horrible that seat is, and that's the better one. That one is still usable, it just looks like hell, but at least it's not completely broken. There's the bottom. You can see it's all rotted out, and what happened is this hinge point here is just completely broken. There's no upright support anymore, so basically when I was sitting in it, it would just recline. So I would prop the extra gas tank right behind here to hold it up, and that's how I've been driving it. So it's the length from the back to the front area that seems to be quite a bit different. So this is all that the seat mounts on, is this box, which this one appears to be made out of just regular plywood. It doesn't even look like marine grade plywood. Maybe it's pressure treated, I don't know, but it's in pretty rough shape. So I don't think those are going to be original to the boat. I think somebody made those. Maybe the original ones were rotted. But I need to recreate that because that's in kind of rough shape, so I don't want to put the new seats on that. More ample evidence that this is a hack carpenter job. This screw that they screwed into the side here completely missed. Just cut the top layer of plywood and then slipped out the side, and they just left that in there. Didn't even bother putting another screw in its place. The wood looks like, I don't know what they used to cut that. It looks like they used a Sawzall. This is what the mount looks like. It's all wrapped in fiberglass material, and it's fiberglassed into the floor, and it's still pretty solid. So I'll just build a new frame to attach to this, and should be all set. Instead of plywood, I'll use I've got some pressure treated decking. I was going to use solid PVC, but I don't have enough solid PVC to make two frames, and it would be too tall, so I'd have to rip it down on the table saw, which I don't really feel like going through all that work. And also solid PVC, if I go buy a new piece at the lumber yard right now, it's crazy expensive, whereas I have a piece of pressure treated deck board 8 feet long that'll probably be perfect for this job. Okay, to make the frame, I need 4 12-inch long pieces, or 1 foot long pieces, and then I need 4 12.5-inch long pieces. The problem is, I only had an 8-foot plank. Even if I only needed 1 foot long pieces, I got to factor in for every cut I take, the width of the blade takes a little out. So I would have lost a little there. So there was no way I was going to get the 8 pieces out of this one plank. Oh, as luck would have it, looks like I've got a piece. Well, salvaged a couple of pieces. I'm just gonna roll with that like that. So this will actually face the outside of the boat, and there's not much space there, so I don't think it's really going to be noticeable. If anybody's sitting in the back of the boat, they'll be staring right at this beautiful workmanship here. Good thing I never claimed to be a carpenter. It's not my best work, but it'll work. So what I did was I cut 2 lengths of this 2x6 and screwed it in through the end. So that's good and solid. Now I got a nice solid base. So I'll be able to slide this whole thing down over the mounts in the boat and then screw it in. But first I got to put the seat on, because I can't get underneath here to put this holes in. And I got to figure out where the holes are going to go. But I got another problem, which is these are the screws they claim are stainless steel that came with the seat. These are just about 1.5 inches long. They're probably metric. At least I hope they aren't, but anywho, here's the problem. They mount in these holes. There is an insert, a threaded metal insert down inside this. This is probably plastic injection molded, so it's way down there. So when I put this in, it doesn't even touch until it gets to there. See how little is left sticking out? So when I thread it in, it almost goes flush. So clearly, this seat's made to mount on a metal plate, probably on top of a swivel pedestal for in a bass boat. Was never made to be mounted to a wood frame. So my problem is I need screws that are going to thread into here that will be able to go through the thickness of that 2x, which is 1.5 inches thick. So I need 3-inch bolts. So now I need to locate the holes. So the trick here is I need to precisely locate these holes onto here to drill them. I have these little doohickeys here, these dowel centers. I wish I had 2 sets because I need this size right here. And I wish I had 4 of them. Because if I had 4, I would stick them in like this, position the seat fairly close to where I want it, and then push down and I'd have 4 marks, but I don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these 2 in, push down, get my first 2 marks, drill those holes, run my bolts up through, and not tighten them down all the way, but just get them to thread in here so that I can keep the seat from moving. And then I'm just going to tilt up the front of the seat far enough to put these into these front ones and push down and repeat. Alright, that seems actually pretty decent. So now I'm just going to push down. With a little luck, this worked. Alright, it's like they don't stick out far enough, it appears. Plan B. Position this, lift it up without moving it, throw this piece of cardboard in there, lower it back down. And without moving the cardboard, voila, I have located my 2 holes. And again, without moving the cardboard, I'm going to pre-drill. So I went down to Napa, picked up stainless steel screws, 3 inches long. This is 1/4 pretty common, so that's nice. Stainless steel, so I got 8 bolts, 8 washers, and 8 locking washers, and that came to, with tax, like almost 13 bucks. Not cheap. But according to the description, this seat came with stainless steel screws. These are the screws that came with the seat. This is a magnet. Sticking awfully good. So I'm going to double check that description, but if it does say, in fact, I'm almost positive it did say stainless steel. If it does, I'm going to probably comment and let people know that, you know, it might seem like a small detail, but regular steel screws are a lot cheaper than stainless. Even this stainless steel screw has a little bit of, but you can see the far cry from this. This is like, really. Alright, so enough of my little mini rant. Alright, so I've repositioned my little centering doohickeys. And the other thing I could have done is I could have made a template. Well, let's test it out. Perfect. So I just dropped the seat into position and it's crooked. It's not too noticeable from this angle, but looking down from directly in back of it, it's clearly going that way too much. You can really see it there in comparison to the steering wheel. So the mistake I made was in assuming that the cleats on the bottom here are perfectly square to the sides of the boat. They apparently aren't. And then the second mistake I made was I made this box, the inside diameter of this box, to fit perfectly over the outside diameter. So I really don't have any wiggle room. I can't twist this to make up for that alignment problem. I should have made this box just a little bit bigger. The little bit of space between the inside board and the cleat wouldn't have probably made much of a difference as far as security goes. But I sat in the seat and it's okay. I'm just going to leave it. It's not worth it for me to really mess with it at this point. So for now I'm just going to go with this. My son's got a couple of friends that are supposed to be coming over tomorrow and they want to go tubing. So I need to get this seat in. I'm just going to leave I'm not going to have time to even build the frame for the other seat. So I'm going to leave the ratty passenger seat in for tomorrow. So I'm going to drill a couple of holes in the side here and put in a couple of long screws. And then I'd like to put screws in from the other side, but it's kind of a tight fit. I'm going to see whether or not I can get away with using my right angle DeWalt cordless drill to get screws in on the other side. If not, then I'll have to put screws in the front and the back. All right, so I ended up putting 2 screws in the side here, 1 screw in the back here, and 1 screw in the front, roughly the same location, but in the front. I really don't see the issue, I really don't see the benefit of going through the trouble of trying to sneak in there with a drill to pre-drill the side here with my right angle drill. It's barely going to fit, and I just don't think it's going to really make that much of a difference strength-wise. I could even put another extra screw here. Hell, I could put 2 more here. I could really go crazy with this, but this is plenty solid. So I'm going to leave it alone. And you guys don't need to see me build the other side. I'll tell you what I'm going to do now, though. I haven't ran the boat in a while, so let's do a cold start. I've been getting, occasionally, people find my Tower of Power video series here, and they look at a lot of like really older ones that I did from a while back, and I talk about how these motors are hard to start, and I always get like questions about, oh geez, mine won't start, or it's really hard to start. How do you get yours started? And before I could even really give a good answer to that question, the first thing I would really need to know is whether or not they have an 1150 like mine or a 115, because they've been making the 115 horsepower inline 6 for quite a while. They made it for quite a while. This was a long series of motors. Mine's a 1972, so mine's designated as an 1150, and at some point they changed over and started calling them 115s, and they made some changes. Mine, being a 72 and being original, has 2 vacuum operated fuel pumps on the side of the motor. So that I think they changed after, I don't know what year, but they made a change there. And then this has got 3 carburetors on it. I don't know if they stayed with 3 through the whole series or not. This has a distributor with a trigger in it that runs off of a timing belt, and I think they may have changed that. So anyways, the ignition was changed on these. So the startup procedure that I have learned with this motor, which is the 72, and even different 72s, depending on how the carburetors are set up, are going to be different. What I've learned is that you want the motor trimmed so it's tilted back, like mine is right now. So in other words, if I turn the motor, you can actually see that the motor is tilted back. That's because why that's important for starting is because the carbs are in the front, and any fuel that comes out of those carburetors when it's cranking, instead of wanting to spill back out the front of the carburetor and into the drip pan and eventually into the water, which is, you know, not environmentally sound, but in 1972 they weren't thinking about that. You want that gas to flow into the motor, give it a really rich mixture. Second thing you do is you want the warm-up lever, and you know, again, a good point. You might not have a warm-up lever on your control. If you're not using an old Mer control because you have a newer version of the motor, you might not even have the warm-up lever. So the warm-up lever is this lever here, which allows you to advance the throttle while it's in neutral. And you want the warm-up lever up pretty high. You have to have a good strong charge in the battery because you need to be able to crank the engine and have enough power left to supply the switch box, what Mercury calls the CDI unit in these motors, and also to energize the choke solenoids. This has two butterflies, plastic gates almost, that, if you will, that slide down over the throats of the carburetors. There's only two, so one of the carburetors they don't bother choking. I guess the idea is if you get two of them choked, you should get enough gas in there to get some of the cylinders firing and start the motor. So you got to have that be able to actuate, and those can get sticky and, you know, have problems. So you got to make sure those are operating correctly. If I turn the key on and I press my choke button on top of my Mer control, I don't know if you can hear that or not, but that's the noise of that plunger moving in and out and moving those. So I know that they're working. Again, getting back to the Mer control, this is my button right here, which I replaced. It went bad. But the ignition switch I replaced with a new one, and the new modern one actually has a push to choke feature. So when I push this key in, it does the same thing as this switch. I could have omitted this switch altogether, but I'm just weird like that, so I insisted on having them both work. So you can either push this in while cranking to choke it, or push this button while cranking to choke it. So the first thing I'm going to do before I do anything is I'm going to reach in here to my primer bulb on my fuel tank, and I'm going to give it a squeeze, and I can feel that I can completely compress it. And I'm going to squeeze it a few times until I feel that it stiffens. So now I can't squeeze it anymore. That tells me that a few things. That tells me that my check valves in my primer bulb are working, more than likely. It tells me that my floats and my carburetors are working because now my carburetor bowls are topped off and the floats have closed and aren't allowing any more fuel to go in there. Now I'm ready to give it a try. And it's not unusual for it to crank quite a bit before it fires. Sometimes, you know, it's just like starts right up and I'm always amazed, and then sometimes it doesn't. So I'm going to hold the button down while cranking. Hear how it's speeding up? Alright, if by now it hasn't started, I'm going to stop. I'm going to try that primer bulb again. And it's soft again, which means it's taking some fuel in. As soon as I hear it catch, I take my finger off of that choke. For water out of the telltale. Only takes about 4 or 5 seconds tops for that water to start coming out of the telltale. Good steady stream. That tells you your water pump is working and there's no blockages in the cooling system. So I'm giving it a little time to warm up. I put the warm-up lever down. this has the, like Mercury liked to call the thunderbolt or the lightning thunder ignition or something like that. That was the whole idea of how this electronic ignition on this thing gives such a nice hot spark. And I want to demonstrate that now. Now that the engine's warm, watch how easy this restarts. I swear it doesn't even sound like that thing's getting one full revolution before it fires right back up. It's a great ignition system when it works correctly. The reason why these things are so hard to start is it's a fuel delivery issue when it's cold. Some guys have actually modified their Tower of Powers and actually added a little fuel injector in the throat of the carburetor, like right at the entrance. I guess it was used on some OMC outboards, and they basically just retrofitted a little valve that when you press the choke button, instead of actuating a solenoid, it actually opens a little valve and squirts raw gas right down the throat of the carburetor.